So we've been talking about evolution. We talked about history of evolution. We talked about evidence that scientists collected that basically guides them to believe that evolution is true. And we're now at like what somewhat. We're going to focus on what the current evolutionary theory is. And again, that goes back to what we talked about the first day. What is the definition of evolution? When a species changes. Not a species. Good. That's the key. So I can change, but that's not evolution. But if my whole population or human beings change genetically over a long period of time because we reproduce and specific traits go away or come through, that's evolution. And let's remind ourselves, what is population? What does that involve?
A lot of the same.
A lot of the same species interbreeding in a specific area, and they obviously can produce offspring because all species can produce offspring. So it's a group of organisms, like here's a group of wolves, here's a group of people. We make up the population of this class, right? That's a population. Picture, it's not the father of genetics, right? I mean of evolution, right? Anybody know who this is? This was before Darwin. He actually thought, he was super smart, and I'm going to give you like a comparison of Darwin and blank. He thought that organisms evolved because of some condition, they would just change. So he thought giraffes, which early on, if I give you the history of giraffes, they were a lot shorter with shorter necks. And over time, we've seen these tall neck giraffes. And basically, it's because they were like avoiding competition with other organisms and going for the tall leaves on the trees. So he thought organisms just grew longer necks over time. This is what he thought. Anybody know who that is? No. Yes. It doesn't. His name is Lamarck. So it was, he saw this in the environment. He saw the changes within species over time, and he just linked it to this. Later, so this is like 1800s, and then like in the 1850s, then you have Darwin, right? Let me see if I'm on the right track. Yeah. When he did his studies, so he's the father of evolution, we know that. Where did he travel to? You should answer this super fast. The Galapagos. He did most of his studies there. How did he get there? What's it called?
HMS Beagle.
HMS Beagle.
He traveled on the Beagle.
What was that one?
Wait, the HMS.
Yes, HMS typos. Yes, I know. Always. And he developed a theory of, not more specific. Good. He developed a theory of natural selection, which is a type of evolution. And he published his book, which is called? Good job. Origin of another typo. Yeah.
I read that he only spent like 5 weeks in the world.
Yeah, but that's where, because of that island, so he traveled the world, let's face reality. But that island, he really, really looked at two specific species that made him study and learn that this is actually happening, which were what?
Finches. Birds.
Finches are birds, and yes, tortoises. Good, giant tortoises. So Darwin, he studied throughout the world, and he kind of piggybacked on what Lamarck said, except he noticed that when you look at organisms in a specific area, and they have unique habitats, so you look at organisms that live in a rocky plain versus organisms that live in a flat plain, or organisms that are subjected to trees with thorns, let's be really specific to what he did, to organisms that are in an area with trees without thorns, right? You're going to see differences. Their environmental conditions, everything within the environment attributed to what traits were seen in specific organisms in the island. So let's look at the finches alone. Why do you think this finch has this long, long, long beak? To reach inside a bark. Maybe he said, I'm not going to fight with the other finches for the food that's easily accessible on the floor. I don't want to fight, so I'm going to go look for others. Oh, there's some inside a tree bark. And over time, you see all those group create that type of species because it's not that their beak grew, okay, it's that the organism that had the long beak survived against others because it found food source and then reproduced other organisms with the long beak, okay? So where Lamarck thought an organism beaks grow because they need food, Darwin realized that organisms with the long beak had a better chance for survival and reproduced offspring to have that characteristic, and then you saw them over time. And it was very specific to areas. So this is a better picture here. You look at this. Here's a group of trees. So original population, okay? Over time, in the original population, there should be a perfect curve of different types of species, but you say one of these trees gets separated, this green tree gets separated into this area that was primarily light green trees. Its genetic trait most likely will vanish because this area is predominantly light green. So even though there was a tree with a dominant trait for dark color, it's reproducing with all offspring that are not. So over time, that dark color trait vanishes. Does that make sense? It's not that dark color tree transformed into a light color tree. After time, after reproduction, it transformed into a population that primarily had this color. So this is called geographical isolation because they're isolated by some kind of barrier like a mountain or a volcanic eruption where the land split or anything like that. And then here is reproductive isolation, which basically means organisms sometimes can't reproduce with other organisms of a specific kind that shows a specific trait. So the trait goes away, okay? It's not that the trait transforms. It's that over time reproduction occurs and the trait that's more predominant for that condition survives. This is actually called natural selection, okay? So even though species are descending, and I want you to write this word here, even though species, because I took it off somehow, have what's called descent with modifications. So they're being born with differences, right? The main reason this happens, so that you could become familiar with vocabulary words. See what I just did? And I had spelled it wrong. Let's make this nice and big. So species are born with modifications based on other species that are in that area that are thriving. This is called natural selection. And this will help you understand what is happening in Darwin's Galapagos Islands, okay? So you look at a population. And now just look at this. Don't fill in anything, and then you fill in after so you can hear it. You look at a population, and look at this room. What do we see? We're all what? Human. We have a mixture of male and female. And what else do you see? Different traits. There's variety, okay? That's actually a thriving population. Variety is important because you never know what's going to happen to the environment that could cause a loss of a genetic trait because it's not a good one. So variety helps populations thrive. Variety, though, okay, so without variation, you don't have natural selection. If something happens, the population can't survive. With variety, you can. So let's say here are my giraffes. And this giraffe only can access this food, and this one can't. Over time, you're going to see all the giraffes with tall necks because the younger ones cannot survive that condition, okay? So you have variation within a population. Don't uncover yet, okay? Don't uncover yet. No, don't write. Just listen. You have variation in regards to traits, right? So what's the trait we're talking about here? Long necks, okay? Oftentimes, a population experiences struggle to survive within their own environment, okay? This can lead to, or overpopulation can exist also in a population, which leads to a struggle to survive. So there's two things within a population that can lead to struggle, okay? Lack of traits, okay? Or too many of one species in a given area. then that could lead to what? So we're going to say lack of resources. It could lead to competition, okay? If extinction occurs, evolution did not, okay? When I mentioned survival of the fittest, so we have variation. Only those with a specific trait might be able to survive and reproduce, okay? That's survival of the fittest. What do you think of when you hear that word? Define that word for me, survival of the fittest. What are you going to replace the word fit with? The people that are stronger. That's wrong. That is the most common mistake. Can it be the weaker one can survive? Okay. It could be the shortest one. It could be the tallest one. It could be the slowest one. It could be the fastest one. It depends on the condition. That one with the favorable trait for a specific condition is the one that survives. Make sure you tell yourself here, it's not always the strongest. Okay?